Good morning, guys. This is podcast number 2 of the Cryptonuts with Sebastian and myself, Dominic, or call me Dom. Today we're going to discuss a few topics, basically the age of the unbanked and the age of biometrics. In Australia, we've had a torrid time with politics. It started off with the banks. Earlier this year, the banks had a class action suit against them, accusing them of unfair practices, which resulted in millions of dollars being given back to consumers, followed by a big debacle with Commonwealth Bank for money laundering. It seems that you need a banking license in order to launder money. This prompted the Royal Commission, and the Royal Commission has just finished, maybe couple of weeks before we had this political issue, and the findings of the Commission were horrific. Apart from misconduct, they were charging fees for customers that had died. They were charging fees for no services given. They were moving superannuation funds into no frills without the consent and not looking after the interest of the consumers. And the Royal interest, and they'd abused the trust of their consumers. Some of them even said that it was a criminal offence what they did. Now, why wasn't criminality levelled against the banks? The reason being is that we can't do that at the banks. We need credibility. We live in a world where the banks, if they cease to exist, everything would crush down and crumble. That's one of the reasons why we got into crypto in the first place. So what has resulted from this? Well, the result has been that the Royal Commission and ASIC, who are responsible for the monitoring of this, have said that we will set up a task force at taxpayers' expense, 70 million, I beg your pardon, and they will sit and judge the attitude of the banks and make sure they don't do anything wrong. So these are the people that we put and trust our money to, and now we're policed by the ASIC task force to make sure they do what they're supposed to do. We cannot do without banking, and I think we have two worlds. We've got the fiat world on one side, and we've got the crypto world on the other side. And whether we like it or not, we live in the fiat world. And in between, there's a doorway where we can move crypto into fiat and fiat into crypto. And that, you need a banking license. So where do we go from here? Well, today we're going to present two items. Today we're going to present banking the unbanked and the age of biometrics, which are going to look at these two issues, which are going to be relevant for the future of the crypto space and the evolution of financial fintech in a way that we've never thought possible. We're going to discuss BAB. BAB has just recently finished its ICO. It's, in essence, it's a very large project, and we're going to discuss that. Sebastian, would you like to summarize what BAB is?
Well, I've been researching BAB for I suppose before Christmas last year. They had their ICO, and I was reading on their website. Now, they're not the only ones in the space that are looking at doing, creating applications and platforms for people who need banking in some of the countries around the world, such as Africa. However, from what I can see, BAB is the only one really going after a banking license in multiple banking jurisdictions, such as Bank of England. I know they're looking at the UK, they're looking at Lithuania, and they're looking at Bahrain. They've already been accepted in the Bahrain sandbox. So once the application comes out, which is scheduled for around about the first week of December, I think the team is talking around about, at worst, because with development sometimes there's always delays, we're looking at the first quarter of 2019. So there will be a particular banking app or an application that people can use on their phones, which I think is an amazing part of the world that we're about to enter. There's no doubt that we're used to these applications, but I think the next stage is being able to move our entire lives, including our financials, into the realm of a mobile phone. And there's no doubt that the mobile phone industry in Africa is actually a lot stronger than people would assume. I know that quite a lot of Africans now have smartphones, and so that's how BAB is going to translate their technology into these particular areas. What's your background and what do you like about BAB?
Well, I've lived in Africa for 30 years, and there's a large group of population that don't have access to banking facilities. I mean, migrant workers work in the major centres, and they've got to send money home to their families via Wells Fargo or whichever way they can. And these communities are rural. They're out in the bush, so to speak, and they have to get a taxi to go into town, and they have to sort of try to find a way. Normally, checks are sent by the post, and that isn't reliable. So there's a huge number of unbanked people around the world. The interesting thing I find with backs is that, as good as a mobile phone is, you lose the human touch. You sort of integrating with a mobile phone. However, the whole principle of backs is that you can have peer-to-peer communication. So you could have a local person who's qualified to interact with BABs, and people can go and put money into their account via this portal, which is a human ATM. That changes the whole dynamics of banking. The fact that it's going to be easy to get onto the platform with a selfie and a few words really does make it accessible to these rural communities. And I think that is going to be a huge catalyst for adoption, which is really what we want.
Yeah.
I found that when I was in Africa, even people that couldn't afford houses or vehicles, they would all have a cell phone because we are social creatures and we rely on interaction. It's a natural sort of progression to go to a mobile phone. And if you can achieve financial independence with a mobile phone with an actual bank account where you can put in fiat as well as using the native BACS token, the potential is huge.
Yeah.
So,
and I agree. I think the big thing is there's been a little bit of uncertainty around about the peer-to-peer human ATM concept, but
yes,
for all the reading I've been doing in the telegrams and things like that in the white paper is that it's not just going to be the individual, it's also going to translate to small to medium businesses. So if you actually get approved as a third tier on the banking app, you can then become an approved portal or an approved location, approved business to also be able to move funds in and out, which is going to be the new age of banking branches. Obviously, banks here in Australia, the branches have slowly diminished down to specific areas, and I think even the branches have got smaller and there's less staff members, and I think it's going to move more towards the AI online type of industry, and this is where I think BAB's going to go to the next level, is they're going to almost make the bank branches as such obsolete, and you'll be able to do everything online through artificial learning and artificial intelligence and obviously peer-to-peer portals around the world or in your particular area. And I think the other side of it is it's also going to remove the borders. So if they're going to create jurisdictions in the UK and Lithuania and Bahrain, people like yourself who do a lot of travel have this access to a worldwide bank in a sense. So we can take our funds with us. We don't have to worry about credit cards and overseas transactions and the old, what are they called, traveller's checks and having cash on us and all of that type of stuff. We'll be able to go to the UK straight away, and our banking scenario doesn't actually change. We'll be able to go to Europe, and our banking scenario doesn't change because we just walk in with our smartphone and away we go. So it's very exciting. I think that the depth and range and reach of BAB and this particular market niche, and I think that's what we probably should talk about, is the banking, the unbanked. I'm sure there'll be some others coming on, and it'll be a bit of a race between the existing banking infrastructure and independent companies like BAB to actually get there first to market. It's going to be very important, and that's why I think this banking license that they're looking to get in the first quarter of 2019 is going to be crucial to their development and momentum moving forward.
Yeah, in terms of how there are two elements to this, as I see. One is the application, and I think their timing is perfect because biometrics, facial recognition, voice recognition, and geolistical algorithms that they put into their smart program is going to make all this possible. The other side of it is the actual banking license. I think if there was an Achilles heel, if they don't get the banking license, essentially the whole project collapses.
Well, they're already approved they've already got an API approval in the UK. So the banking license will not be detrimental to the success of their application because they're actually already approved as a money lender and an e-money lender in the UK, so they can actually proceed. The banking license obviously will allow them to hold funds and obviously bring in an extended range of services such as loans, peer-to-peer loans, holding people's funds. So the banking license is obviously optimal. I think everyone's looking forward to seeing if that actually gets across the line, but I don't think it'll stop BAB from moving forward in the next couple of years because, like I said, they've got the API approval.
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the conditions of getting the banking license is the credibility. The regulators are very, very stringent on issuing banking license. And they appointed Thomas Brook. He's as a fintech lawyer who basically went through the whole process of checking their mandates and their documentation regulations to start off, to make sure that when they launched the ICO, everything was in order. And then they've employed the services of Lucy Clement, who's had 20 years with the UK regulators. Now, this lady has worked in every department there. She understands what is required, and she is very positive that although it is a paradigm shift from the standard banking applications, she's quite bullish on the fact that they can get this across the line. Now, they've got these major advisors. The company is very transparent. So if anybody were to succeed in this, it's going to be people like that because they've got a very professional team. Their whole motivation is to deliver the project. You know, we're so used to projects being overpromised and underdelivered in this space. I think that Babs is a different breed of ICO, which I think they will deliver. I think that their track record and the information transparency is excellent. You know, Paul Johnson, the ICO, he's on Telegram and he shuts down people that are misleading the group, and he's very open and there's a lot of information that you can glean. So you can literally ask any question and you get an answer. So this transparency bodes very well because we know community drives projects forward, and there is a stronger and stronger following, not only in the UK but also outside the UK.
No, I agree.
This project is so huge that if they achieve 50, 60% of it, it's going to be a major paradigm shift in the way finances from the financial sector to the crypto world are going to integrate. And I think that's part of the evolution of this space. Yeah. So I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, well, I talk a lot about niches, and that's the big thing about blockchain is the diversity of niche. We can talk about Bitcoin and we can talk about cryptocurrencies, and then we can talk about the platforms such as EOS and NEO, and we've talked about those, the building of decentralized applications like Ethereum. Then we've got all the different financial instruments and different tools, and I think the concept of blockchain banking as a whole is sort of flying under the radar. It's not, people talk, they're talking about the dashes and the verges, and you can have your independent wallets, and I can send you money, you can send me money, we can do it privately, and those sort of, those particular parts of the service that they provide. But I think with BAB being it is going to be a centralised entity. They are a registered company in the UK. They're going to provide just a slightly different outlook to the entire sector or that niche, and there's only a couple that are doing it. And I was actually reading a report on, I think these guys are approved e-money, so there is a big difference between an e-money and an e-money. I think something like a PayPal, I think we talked about this the other day, that PayPal does hold funds, but I don't think that they lend funds. So there is a little bit of difference in between what a bank does and what PayPal does. And then there was Revolt. I think Revolt is more of an e-money type of platform. It's got 2.5 million subscribers. or members or customers, if you like, in the last few years. It's actually growing exponentially. And they've had some issues recently, and that's got to do with the regulatory guidelines and compliance. They've had some issues with their application. I think funds got stuck, and then there was a massive outcry from members who were overseas. They were on holidays, didn't have access to funds for 7 days, etc., etc. And then when it got down to the nitty-gritty, it was due to compliance and some other issues. And I think that's the one big thing, that the particular blockchain entities, no matter what niche they're in, that are following the path of compliance and regulatory acceptance are going to probably win in the long run. It'll probably take longer for them to blossom. I think we could talk about PayPal as being another one, slightly different niche, but they're also really taking their time with the regulations and with compliance. And I think in the long run, that's what people want too. We want security. I mean, we're talking about putting our weekly salary, potentially our weekly salary, into some of these applications. And you could talk about, what was that other one, Puma Pay I talked to you about the other day, being a potential platform for reoccurring payments. And I think you'll find that applications like BAB will probably look at integrating some of those particular systems, so it's an all-in-one. And again, it's going to come back to confidence. You know, the consumer wants to know, one, can we have access to our money, and two, does it meet compliance? And in the long run, I think that's the game here. Whoever does that first is going to win.
Absolutely. I think that the banking sector and the crypto world, I mean, if there's going to be an integration, there has to be a marriage. You know, we talk about being decentralized. You know, everyone thinks that all crypto nuts and people that are getting involved in crypto are anarchists. Some don't like the system. We all don't trust the system, and that's one of the reasons why we got into it. But we have to be realistic. To be totally decentralized actually brings up a lot of other evils as well. There's a lot of scammers in an unregulated, decentralized industry, and there has to be more regulation. Everybody wants an EFT. You have to go and comply with the regulations to enable an EFT to come in the first place. Yeah. These things will happen. They have to happen because we live at this point in time, in a fiat world. We don't live in a crypto world, you know. And as those things start to merge, the edges will become more and more blurred, and that's going to be adoption. Yeah. With BAB, you're going to have a whole host of financial services that the banks offer. Recurring payments, paying your debts, automatic stop orders. I assume all these things are in the pipeline to be processed. And as that starts to happen, this will start blurring the lines between fiat and crypto. I see that they've also got in their white paper elements of central banks tokenizing their currencies so that you can actually convert any currency that you want on the platform. This is a huge thing because all these are reasonable prices, all done in a peer-to-peer manner where you are communicating with the other person. So there's a human element, and that's what we want to control our own banks. And the other thing is that whether you're a corporation or whether you're in a paddy field in China or in India or in Africa, you're all treated equal. And that's going to be a paradigm shift because at this point, that is not the case. The poor get slumbered with heavy interest fees and expenses which they can't afford, and those that got the most pull get away with the least fees, which is skewed. It's skewed the wrong way. So I think having a playing field where everybody can participate, and depending on your tier level, you can get involved as much as you want to, given to your apparatus and liquidity that is offered in the marketplace. It's a massive shift from where we are right now.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of duality here. I think there's always going to be a level of decentralization and centralization, and it's really going to come down to the individual where they actually want to participate. I like the idea of decentralization and self-ownership, but I also like the idea of management and having some structure. So there's got to be a little bit of both ways. In regards to the ETF, I think there's a lot of talk about the ETF. The only way, the big thing about the ETF is we know that it's a traditional financial instrument. It is going to create a gateway from, well, we can call it fiat, we can call it the old system to the new system, which is going to allow that confidence on the floodgates to open. So I think that's where the big push is. I mean, I'm quite happy for there not to be an ETF. I don't think we necessarily need it. We can create our own tools, and I'm sure they're available. It's just that someone has to put these forward. But unfortunately, the old school systems won't allow that yet until we see the ETNs and the ETFs that provide the confidence to come into the space. How long is that away? I'm not too sure. I think it could be a lot closer than we think. They might approve one or two early ones, but at the end of the day, I think the bottom line is that Bitcoin has to get to a certain market cap, I believe, where manipulation isn't as rampant and allows for a little bit more confidence for these guys to come and use an ETF. Because at the moment, you know, we've seen the market pop today with a $10 billion pop. It doesn't take much to move the market $200, $300, $400 in Bitcoin and vice versa. So that is probably the main concern from SEC, is just those aggressive movements, which can actually be caused by individuals or entities or groups. So once the market cap of Bitcoin gets to 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 5 trillion in itself, which I think is not crazy. Some people probably think it's crazy, but I think, you know, the 1 trillion more stability before these particular hedge funds start moving in. There will be some early to market movers, no doubt, those with a little bit more courage or their own infrastructure. Maybe they've got some insurances, they've got some technology involved that's going to provide some balance, or a ratio or an index or something, you know, and that's going to be a case-to-case basis. But very interesting. I think for anyone that's in the space, we're sort of wishing it would hurry up a little bit. But in the end of the day, I think we just want to get things right.
I think that a lot of this is psychological conditioning. You know, when everything was banned in China, there was rumors in the first place. And when it happened, it was catastrophic. The market overreacted to a large extent, which gave a massive opportunity to buy up all the good coins which had crashed through the floor. You know, I think sometimes rumors start off, and that's the prelude, that's the trickle. Then you get the actual application that gets put in, which gives it more credibility. There's a degree of interest all around the world in this, and everybody's looking at ETFs. I mean, even the SEC have actually commented. Some of the individuals have said that it makes sense to have an SEC. So there's a softening of attitude all the way through. It's only a matter of time before this gets established and it's accepted. I think you're right. I think manipulation is the big problem, and I think that's a function of market size. Where it's the cart of the horse. You know, how do you get a bigger market cap? By ETFs or a combination of ETFs and more money going into the space. Which one comes first?
Yeah,
I think there's going to be a progression, you know. But once it gets to $1 trillion, you're going to smooth out the waves. Right now, Bitcoin, if it moves 5 to 12%, it's a huge drop or a jump. But you can get 50 to 60, even 100% on the small cap coins. So it's a function of market cap. So yes, I mean, the days will come when the asset class will be big enough to bring in stability. And that's really the only way the institutions are going to invest their money. So they don't have these massive jumps where they can lose millions of their investment in a matter of a few days. It's got to be subtle. It's got to be more subtle for them to take interest. And that's going to happen, I think. You know, BAB is sitting at 13 million market cap. We haven't spoken about the investment potential of BAB. It's a very small market cap in terms of where they are sitting right now. Yeah. I think that once the app is launched and once the banking license is closer to being achieved or steps have been taken, and I think they communicate that well, it's potentially one of those coins that could actually jump.
Yeah, and I think there's, after this horrid bearish trend we've faced since Christmas, there's no doubt, I think a lot of coins are oversold, a lot of are undervalued. So it's going to be a very exciting sort of nervous time over the next 12 months to see what the market does, if it just tends to go sideways or is it going to actually grow? Is there going to be an ETF? Is there going to be something else? I think we're just going to have to wait What's your feelings on biometrics? I mean, for me, I'm a big ambassador for privacy. You know, the old analogy, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about. But, you know, I just think that's absurd. I mean, you would obviously feel somewhat reserved if I decided to come over to your house and look through your house and look through your bathroom cupboard or your top drawer in your bedroom. You know, I think there's basic human rights of privacy, and obviously when it becomes our biometrics, I think at the end of the day, if there's security and our data is encrypted, I'm actually okay with that if I'm in control of it. However, I'm not a big fan of just giving out our information, and that's why I think some people are anti-biometrics. We see it here at the Australian airport. I'm always a little bit funny about it, you know. I feel like it's just somewhat invasive. I had to do the X-ray where I had to put my hands above my head the other day, and I actually asked the guys, is this going to cause any particular radiation exposure? And he actually said, no, it's nothing like the luggage scanners. And I was sort of like, well, so what, is that your scientific peer-reviewed study on radiation? And it's happened a couple of times. I'm probably going to reject it next time. I'm not a fan of that type of stuff. And that's, you could almost say that's biometrics, but you're looking inside my body. And I definitely don't have anything to hide when I'm going on an aeroplane. I just want to get on the plane and get to where I'm going. And I have that right. And I think everyone should fight for that. But I think unfortunately, biometrics is going to be the way it is in future. If we get rid of government, we don't have to worry about our biometrics being abused. Put it more into our own hands. But what's your opinion on biometrics?
Well, I think the privacy or the lack of privacy goes against the grain. You know, everybody wants the privacy. You know, I don't have a Facebook account because I think it's just opening your everything that you've done to the world. My name is on Facebook because they sent me a link and I clicked on it inadvertently and I got an instant account. So it's very intrusive. And I think biometrics is a double-edged sword again, in the sense that, you know, owning private keys and remembering where you put the private keys, and if you lose the private keys, you lose your finances, is a daunting issue for, I think, most people that have invested any kind of money into cryptocurrency. But the thing about biometrics that I like, and I think this is the one thing that we also must consider, is that once your facial recognition or voice recognition, that is your key to unlock your account. No one else can see that because it's encrypted. So as long as biometrics are done in an encrypted, responsible manner, for example, Bab, if you have a bank account and it's on the blockchain, you don't want people to look into your bank account. But if it's encrypted using biometrics so that no one can see, no one can open that account except you, then it's a positive thing. I think people are very careful about exposing themselves, hence all the privacy coins, which are you know, in the top 100 coins. Privacy is very important. And I think any successful company will have to honor their responsibility to privacy. I don't know how Facebook is going to recover their credibility. You know, even Zuckerberg is going on a global thing trying to get credibility. He's lost it to a large extent. But I think our privacy is always eroded, even when we go on our iPhone or Android phone. Whatever we look into is being recorded by AI, by Google and Apple. So we're in a world where we need to monitor this artificial intelligence intrusion into our lives. And I think biometrics could actually lock privacy as opposed to exposing it. So it depends on how it is used. Anything can be misused, and hopefully anything that is misused won't be supported, and everything that it is and does honor your independence and freedom will be used, and it will become more popular. I think that's the element. It's a question of trust again. Do we trust the providers to honor our privacy?
Yeah, I think on privacy, there's no doubt that we're used to the internet. We've seen YouTube, Facebook's been called out in the media, all the search engines. I think a lot of the social media platforms, anything that's been providing a free platform has got the potential to skim our data and then on-sell it. And I think one of our videos in future, I'd like to actually talk about encrypted data portals and how, as individuals, we can take back some of that control. And there's no doubt, I think that's one of the main parts of blockchain that interests me personally, is privacy, encryption, monetization of our own data, and taking control of the internet and every footprint that we leave. So it's been good talking to you, Dom. I always like having a chat with you, whether it's on our Telegram, Cryptonut's Telegram. The link is in below this video. You're welcome to come along and participate, whether it's as a viewer or as a participant. We're always open to new entries to our team. And I'd like to talk to you during the week about what we're going to talk about next, and hopefully the viewers got some value out of this particular video. So thanks for joining me and joining us on our Cryptonuts episode number 2, and we'll tune in again soon for the next one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you, mate.